Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Michelle, and I'm the administrator of the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association of Evolutionary Astrologers. And I'm here today with Jordyn Smith, the voice and astrologer behind Nonconformist Conscience, the website, blog, and YouTube channel, and a fellow evolutionary astrologer. Now, many of you may know Jordyn already. She joined us last year for the EA online conference co-teaching a beautiful segment on Lilith. And we are coming back with Jordyn again this time to explore the dynamics around the asteroid Cassandra. And I was going to say, one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Jordyn, and something I've known about you since the very first time we met, like since the very beginning, is that you have a way of really discovering these asteroid goddesses, integrating them into your life and practice as an astrologer. And I'm so curious to hear from you how you found your way to Cassandra.
Well, that's a great question. I was actually on the message board. Let me think about this. Actually, this was through a conversation with Stacy Pizzura like a couple years ago. We were just like jamming out on the phone, I think, and talking about life. And she actually brought up Cassandra. We were talking about asteroids, and I was telling her about something going on in my life. And she was like, I feel like Cassandra, she was like, I don't know a lot, but I feel like your Cassandra's really telling. And so it went like it led me down this rabbit hole. And then on the message board
Mm.
last year, I want to say I was looking at Share Heights chart. And after I had learned about who she was and I saw her Cassandra, it was the first thing that stuck out to me. And so it made me go down a rabbit hole of starting to really understand and correlate this in other people's charts. I started getting clients who had this dynamic of needing to reclaim their voice and understand themselves and reintegrate their own inner knowledge. And they would tell me this story about their life, and then their Cassandra would be the first thing that I saw. And so I started to just, in true astrological fashion, observe and correlate and deepen my practice. And started really looking at her through transits. Like, it was pretty mind blowing when I actually went back and I looked at prior transits, like the Me Too movement or different things. And like, there was always a really prominent Cassandra. So to me, there's this resurgence of women, especially women, reclaiming their voice and their own inner knowledge and relationship to themselves. And I think that we see it in the collective right now as well. So
Oh, absolutely. And where is she now in terms of transiting Cassandra?
she's at 22 Capricorn. So yeah, she's you know, trining the sun and having all types of dynamics go on right now. I think a lot of people are utilizing that to practice and like pulling in the Virgo of how do I restructure the way I live by just speaking my truth? So yeah. And then having to practice it.
Just just to say that, like, then she's sitting on my south node, squaring my Saturn, and our conversation from this morning just
Yeah.
totally so much sense now.
There you go.
Yeah. Wow, welcome, Cassandra. My familiarity with her is only through the book that Cassandra Speaks, which is,
Yep.
uh,
Mhm.
uh, you know, um
I have it. I love it.
Yeah, I have it too, and it's like this archetype of the mythological feminine that has, lost or repressed their voice, uh,
Mhm.
is fascinating, and in your lecture for the conference, you're gonna be integrating her with Mercury and the nodes of Mercury, or what how are you working
Yeah.
from the EA?
So when you look at Cassandra, you really want to look at not just the physical asteroid to look at the complex that's going on in someone's chart, but of course the nodal axis of hers. But then so much of her underbelly, right? Like the core of who she is. Yeah, it's about reclaiming your voice. So there's a need to look at Mercury and its nodes, but also it's about reclaiming your inner knowledge and your own inner voice. And so how that, when you do that, it impacts your own relationship to self. And so pulling in Venus and her nodes to really look at this in a total way.
Hmm, interesting. Well, from a transit perspective too, this means Cassandra in Capricorn is squaring Chiron in Aries,
Yep.
and also squaring the south node of Venus, which is at 23 degrees Libra. Um,
Hmm.
and Venus is in Libra. And I often think of Venus as like that aspect of listening and listening from the perspective of this like reciprocity, right?
Hmm.
We give and receive through listening. But, the shadow of both Capricorn and Libra, I think, are those capacities in which where we can suppress our needs or suppress through conditioning. Um, and what have you found with Cassandra relative to her position in people's natal charts when you're observing her? Tell us more about that.
So I can speak to a few things dealing with that. Usually there is a story around not being heard or believed and the suppression of voice for sure, because of the projections of others. And so there, I have had clients numerous times come in and they want to express themselves to someone and they're terrified to do it. They, and usually their Cassandra is retrograde. And then if you look at it in tandem with the person that they're afraid to talk to or express themselves with, there's usually some type of story that goes on with that. Um, and then what I typically see is I see it in some men's charts, but it's more prominent in women's, which makes sense because of the nature of the patriarchy, and women suppressing their voices, abandoning themselves in order to just survive throughout,
Mhm.
eons. Um, but the chart examples that I'm using are two of my clients, and I feel like they really demonstrate the Cassandra archetype in two different ways. Like one has become an activist, and it's through the dynamics that she's experienced and her not being heard or listened to when speaking out that she finally was like, I'm gonna make a 501c and I'm gonna do this myself and I'm gonna start, just implementing it. And her chart is really interesting, and the things that she is an activist about are really indicative of her chart. Murder of indigenous women, um, speaking, and she has a story around that not being heard whenever her friend went missing. And it's right there in her chart. And then the other chart example I'm using is another client who experienced a lot of sexual assault growing up within her own family system and chose to speak up about it. And then um, how she used that instance as a catalyst for these, dynamics dealing with Cassandra, and also her own. Both of these ladies have their bottom line of Pluto being filtered into this, and you can just see it like, oh my gosh, this is helping them get to this bottom line, and or the polarity point of what this is actually entailing for their core evolutionary growth.
Mm,
So with Cassandra, you'll see a lot of usually women who are speaking up about sexual violence or speaking up for the underdog. It's kind of a Virgo dynamic, which makes sense because you're pulling in Mercury, right? So kind of wanting to speak up for the underdog or speaking up for those that are viewed as less than within social structures, and then having to combat people not believing them. Because what typically ends up happening with Cassandra is I see this more in people who are in the individuated stages. Whatever it is that they're speaking to actually has the ability to help the consensus move forward. It's some type of knowledge that they have around speaking the truth about something. Some people, it is more a prophetic kind of dynamic, right? Um, but ultimately, it's challenging the status quo. And so there's often a lot of pushback, scapegoating, or deflection or projection put on these people. And so you can see whenever they're really, you're
Oh no.
just blazing a path no matter what. They say what you want about me, but I'm going to keep there doing this. This is, it's important. And
Right.
so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful. You just made me think there's I've been really fascinated with the whole um spiritual prophetess or I find a lot of women in evangelical religions who are coming forward as like prophets, which from a very typical patriarchal lens is actually a contradiction to the biblical ways of
Yes.
living, right? Women were not prophets.
Mm-mm.
And in fact, it was forbidden for women to be, or for people to be oracles or diviners. But there
Mhm.
was a movement of, um, it seems mostly Black evangelical women who are coming out as prophets on
Mhm.
YouTube. And I love listening to them. I'm fascinated by the things that they share.
That's
And it's
perfect for
right.
Capricorn,
Yeah,
like
it's very
Cassandra.
much a Capricorn Cassandra.
Yeah.
And, they're quoting scripture and they're channeling the Holy Spirit and they're doing it all, right?
So they're challenging the structures within around the limitations that have been imposed around gender constructs even, or
And
skin color.
they literally will call themselves like boss women, like it's
Mhm.
I love it in such a way because we can think that the reclaiming of the voice is only, speaking out against something, right? But
Mhm.
the way from the Capricorn perspective, it can be really speaking within the structures of something in a way that defies the structure itself.
Yes.
Yeah. And wow, so I would love love to look more at that. Um are there other asteroid goddesses that you're also following and integrating into your EA work?
Yeah. I use Series a lot, I would say. I use Software Sign, I use Hecate sometimes, but it's usually Cassandra, Ceres, Lilith, and Software Sign is what I typically look at.
Beautiful. Um, I've been finding, I follow Lilith, both the Black Moon point and the asteroid, and Chiriclo and
Mhm.
Juno.
I
I
love Juno.
integrate Hecate here and there, but not, um, I learned a lot from Demetra George's talk last year
Yes.
at the conference. And so for, my own research as an astrologer, I think it is very similar to yours that direct experience from the chart is, the most helpful way to reintegrate some of these more lost archetypes,
Mhm.
not always seen. And it's interesting, Cassandra is also an expression of that like reclamation as you're bringing her back into the conference this year and bringing forward something that I think is so powerful for us to be able to, I'm really looking forward to learning from you in that respect. And I also use Ceres. She's been squaring the nodes,
Yes.
this year, which I feel is very significant. And I just released a video last week about her conjunction with Pluto and Venus in Aquarius in December, which I think is one of the most significant transits of the year. Probably not gonna get the, like, big, um, you know
Yeah, people
thanks.
aren't,
Yeah,
they won't be talking about it all the time, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, even looking at series, I've included her often lately. Um,
Oh, I are you frozen? When you
near you. Oh,
you
there we go.
okay, good.
Okay. Um,
You were saying you've included her often lately.
yeah, and also it's hard to answer the question what goddesses I use because the more I think about it, I'm like I use a lot actually. Like I love Juno as well. Aries lately for me, I feel like is so
Oh, you're
it's like there's this need to restructure society right now and have a resurgence of natural law
mm,
through, on the one hand, looking at that resolution, the South Node of where extremes have played out in social structures, especially around not being heard, groups of people within society. But on the other hand, it's restructuring society by reclaiming that natural law of giving, sharing, and inclusion that is held within Libra, as one of the bottom lines right now. So it's been fascinating for me to watch the things come up, because that South Node, yeah, it's ruled by Venus, but so is Uranus and Taurus. And the sharing of resources. So it kind of pulls into this whole dynamic. And, I just, yeah, I love looking at it even on a collective level, what these mean.
Well, and I think if we think about it from, like, a Pluto perspective, the way I see all of these feminine archetypes, these are aspects of soul.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, last year's talk was Lilith, the root of the soul, right? The root of
Mm-hmm.
the soul. And for so many of us, we have this fragmented or fractured relationship with the
Yes.
feminine soul. And however that's caused, whether it comes from our family conditioning and really looking at mother and father and how we were raised, or whether it's coming from a larger social, or cultural context.
Mm-hmm.
In order for us to evolve, we have to reclaim those lost parts of soul. And within the framework of astrology, we also have a voice or like a narrative, I would say, maybe about the female archetypes that is predicated based on stories and mythologies that were written in a very particular way and that had
Yes.
effect of creating a natural oppressive system for women.
Distortion for sure. I mean, okay, even Cassandra has two um myths
Oh,
within.
ugh.
Yeah, so there's two different myths, and one is where excuse me. One is really painting Cassandra out to be the bad person, right? And the other one is, in my opinion, more encompassing of the truth. So one is she basically reneged on these sexual advances, and so therefore she was cursed. And the other myth tells a completely different story, so it's just, to me, it's fascinating. Even when researching asteroids that I get interested in, I like to go back, and there's recently I've been diving back into research of one of the asteroids that I absolutely love. And I've been getting into Friedrich Nietzsche's like works where he was talking about this, and he's coming from a very Christian point of view, but then he's trying to, you can see that that was like someone who was really objectifying these dynamics of like, but actually, how would this play out? What does this mean? And trying to get to the bottom line of it. So I feel like even when you're researching asteroids, not even just through observing and correlating in someone's chart, whenever you get into other people's perspectives about an archetype of a myth, it becomes really rich. And there's always like some, I don't know, some string that stays interwoven. It's like this little bit of truth is still staying in there. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you just have to kind of follow these breadcrumbs as you go. So I don't know. I hope that makes sense, but it's something that I'm fascinated by.
Yeah, me as well. And it reminds me of a story my painting teacher told, that um for example, Venus, the most common image of her is this painting by Botticelli, right?
Hmm.
Um, but there was a very patriarchal, and distortion that he was operating with. He had
Yeah.
relationships with underage women. It was this like objectification of the feminine that was
Yes.
created this image, which is famously accepted as her image. And what she described that having the effect of for women or for painters or for women who paint the feminine especially is that there's a particular way in which we've been conditioned to see the image of the feminine that is unconscious to us on a certain level because we were not the creators of our own image. And in order to actually be able to paint freely as ourselves, we have to go through a process which she guides in her painting, um, her painting program to reclaim our own image. And for me, that has also met an immense resistance that I have to
Hmm.
painting the feminine, right? And I've just been working with that, the last couple of years in my painting practice. And similarly, I have had that relationship to um when I was a child, being told by my mother that I sang off key and that I didn't have any rhythm because I had imitated a woman who was my kindergarten teacher and her song, right?
Hmm.
And so I grew up with this perception of myself that I couldn't sing. And it's been in recent ceremonies where I'm sitting and I'm actually beginning in my own life to receive songs and noticing how much I love to sing, that I received
Hmm.
this message in one of my ceremonies recently where I was told I am a singer and I have been since the very beginning. But what I'm facing, I think, it's interesting, Cassandra on my South Node.
That's literally what I was thinking about. And also pulling in that Venusian energy of self-worth
Yeah,
around this.
exactly. And I let myself go, to a retreat that was entirely about learning to sing and claiming the divine voice. And I ended up getting sick and having a very hard time being able to sing. And, a part of what I recognize is that whenever we're having these transits where layers of unconscious or conscious conditioning via Pluto, via, the archetypes are being stripped away from us, often we struggle and like come up against the same resistance or dynamics, right, in ourselves as a way of it revealing the very part of ourselves that we're working to reclaim. That's what I think your reflections really elicited in me. I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, and also I think me and you are both have, I mean, I'm going to give this through my own perception as well. We have like these Capricornian dynamics, both of us. And of course, we're talking about Cassandra and Capricorn. So it's also those types of what I find whenever I have these kind of big transits like you're speaking about that are unlocking this, or I'm being confronted with some kind of like, oh, what is this reflecting, like, um I often think that it pulls in the Capricorn function of not only self-reflecting to investigate, especially because it's pulling you into the emotionality of what's going on, but also it's as you learn and you gain this wisdom from these experiences, then you get retested again, right? In such a Capricornian way of like self-determination, like, hey, you've been learning about this. And so here's a nice little soul test.
Yeah.
How are you going to choose? What kind of judgment are you going to make about this situation this time? Or, I don't know. It always feels like this. self-determination test. Again, that's coming from my own, evolutionary dynamic of being confronted with that time and time again. And I remember there was a question on the old message board I asked about Capricorn. It had nothing to do with me, but Rad actually answered it, and it pertains to this. And I'm like, I feel like I didn't know that I needed to hear that. And it, oh, hold on.
One of the things Jordyn is mentioning just while she steps away for a second is the EA message board. So on the School of EA website, there is a complete message board that has been going on for many, many years, which many of the core evolutionary astrologers, Ari Moshe and Deva and Kristen, like this was their like little petri dish of learning and evolution and growth and development.
Yes.
And there are extended dialogues, and there are lectures from Jeffrey Wolf Green that are posted on there. There is a lot of work that is on that message board, and I'll put a link to it in the comments for this video, including a thread that Rad started on the asteroid goddesses, where he regularly posted a chart with, so much information. And we at the association have taken over the responsibility of managing and moderating the forum that used to be on the old message board.
Mm-hmm.
However, the technology that we use on the back end of our website doesn't allow him to post that much extensive content in one single post. So unfortunately, it started prohibiting him posting everything that he wanted to post, which was, probably such a challenge to navigate. And I haven't really been able to figure out how to resolve it. So he went back to posting them back on the old
The
thread.
old. Mm-hmm.
You can follow it there. You can also see Jordyn's post on the undistorted masculine, which started out that whole huge conversation on Lilith last year. Is some of these posts are some of the most, intensive conversations, and it's really a space of learning. That is one of the things,
Yes.
of holding the torch of that message board over at the association and giving people the opportunity to bring forward their questions and things like that. Yeah, and Jordyn, you are definitely an active member and participant in that scope. So I really appreciate your
I got
it's
the gentle
a
nudge one time, and I just was like, okay,
you
here we
know,
go.
you
I'm
just
just
keep
gonna
going.
I'm just gonna ask this. Like, here we go.
It's great. It's really
But oh, what I was gonna say, I swear there's like this TV turns on like it's fascinating. Random times of the day. Oh, I'm not even gonna go into it. I just want to be like, hello, like, um,
spirit
but
of the Netflix are here.
right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, what I was gonna say, and I think that this is perfect for Cassandra and Capricorn right now transiting, because there are a lot of people, like I said, there's this resurgence of being able to reclaim one's inner voice, reclaim one's own self-expression, right? That is a Cassandra thing, to self-express through the voice, as a way to create more inner self-reliance on an emotional level, I would say,
Mhm.
healing that emotional dynamic. But with Cassandra and Capricorn, it makes me think of what we were talking about. And on that message board, it didn't have anything to do with Cassandra, okay? So just bear with me. But I remember asking a question about Capricorn, and Rad saying that Capricorn will give soul tests to be self-determined, and I'm going to cuss, and these are just his words. to say, fuck no, I'm not that person anymore. And that is something that's just like stuck with me. And so here's this Capricorn archetype, and we've got Cassandra. And like, I just think of women all over the world right now who are advocating and knees shaking, hands shaking, being terrified to like say what it is that they need to say, but doing it anyway and being self-determined because they don't want to go back in time.
Right.
They don't want to go back. They're being self-determined. Like, and to me, it's just pulling in the whole cardinal archetype of just having this courage of just going for it as a way to help the collective have a restructuring process, especially in regards to, I think about this when thinking about past lifetimes, how often women have had to be the container of holding other people's emotional stuff and then having to suppress their voice. And now it's more of trying to create equity within this dynamic of staying whole into oneself, especially on an emotional level, while having the courage to speak for their own healing, right? And I mean, I see it everywhere. And that's the nature of whenever you start studying something, you start to see it everywhere, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, I can't get rid of it. Like, there it is.
Well, and it's beautiful. It reinforces for me what I've been saying all year relative to Pluto and Aquarius, that the polarity point is Leo, which is about that creative self-actualization.
Mhm.
And it makes me curious about when she actually leaves Capricorn and enters Aquarius, because there's so many of these transits that we're experiencing right
Mm.
now that are end of ages, like end of all of us in this incarnation, in these physical bodies, right? Regardless, you don't have to believe that we reincarnate, but if you do, you can know that, like, at least for this lifetime, once this is done, it's done. And we're
Absolutely.
never going to see it again in that same way. And to that, it's like emphasizing putting a period on the end for all those voices, for all those women. And I do think this is happening for men, but for men, I think it's happening relative to the reclamation of their emotional bodies, and where we have not had relationships of safety, where emotional safety and
Mhm.
regulation. And Ari was talking about this in a recent video relative to Mars and Cancer, you know, like, there are things to for the woman to suppress her voice and for the man to suppress his emotions or whatever. And regardless of our gender choices or dynamics, we all have this in some way where we become conditioned in order to be what we might think as safe, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And to me, the all reclaiming all these parts of soul, the feminine nature of soul, the natural law, and reclaiming our voice, reclaiming our sovereignty, reclaiming our creative actualization, activating that as a means to express the emotional body, right? These are all the deeper evolutionary healings, and I'd be so curious to see when Cassandra enters Aquarius and when it really becomes like,
Mm.
or if she
I
has
know.
Pluto.
Um, oh gosh, I have it written down. It's not going to be for a few more months. I know at the time of the conference, she's going to be at 23 degrees. So, I mean, I will tell you a funny story. Um, the day that Cassandra was actually conjunct Pluto and Aquarius is the day that I put together my whole lecture.
Wow.
And I sent it to Kristen and I was like, here you go. And she was laughing. She was like, I love that you're a Capricorn, but I'm also like, I feel like I had some guidance here. Like it was just,
Yeah.
um, I was able to like sit down and focus and like everything came in like a streamline, and I was really able to, I don't know, I feel like I'm doing her justice. But I'm definitely still like today I was looking at it and like tweaking some things. Of course, the Virgo in me is like, okay, how can I just improve this or perfect it a little bit more or whatever? without diluting it with too much, you know? But yeah, that's the day that she was conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. I did my whole lecture, my whole presentation.
Oh,
So,
that's so wonderful. Well, we're really looking forward to it. For those of you who are wanting to join us for the conference, Jordyn is one of 15 lectures. We have a kickoff panel with many of the astrologers, um, really to bring the community together and talk about current events and happenings in the EA. And then we have amazing lectures, including Jordyn's. There's two ways you can register. You can sign up for a full pass, which gives you access to all 4 days. And that, if you want to use the coupon code Jordyn, Jordyn 10, you could take 10% off of the full conference pass. Alternatively, if you're just like, oh my God, I want to soak up all this Cassandra stuff, but that's all I want to come for, we do have individual event passes, and there's a link in the description to this video. You can sign up just for Jordyn's um, class. You'll have access to the live lecture that she does, and you will receive the recording replay with her presentation materials. So, thank you so much, Jordyn, for being
thank
with
you.
us on this journey and for your fearless. It's funny, the image that I chose when creating the graphics for your talk is a Lady Justice goddess,
Mhm.
sword of truth. And it's like, I was like, oh, is it too much Libra? But it's perfectly Cassandra in the way that you just described
It
your
is.
voice also to show up and keep integrating these voices of the feminine into your work and to keep evolving yourself as an evolutionary astrologer. I
Oh
really see that and respect that so much about you.
gosh, doing this lecture has been actually really healing for my own Cassandra, who's in Sag in the eighth, ruled by my Jupiter. So there's been this whole dynamic of even me personally speaking my truth and allowing it to grow my relationship to self without, you know, I don't know, being afraid of like the projections or the expectations of someone else. It's through doing this work that it's like, this is why I love EAs. Like once you get into something, it starts to take on a life of its own, even in your life, even in your own natal chart. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, I find that to be true as well. Well, thank you so much. All right, everyone. If
thank you.
you want to join us, all of the details that you need to know are in the description to this video, and we hope to see you there. I'll see you in your lecture, Jordyn, if not before. Bye bye, my
Thank you. Bye.
thank you.